7 ways to EASIFY your piano. I lost motivation to play the piano when I tried to learn the traditional way, starting from a sheet music book, reading note for note. It was too hard, learning songs took too long, I got bored really quickly, and my progress trying that method was painfully slow. Eventually, I found it's not that sheet music is bad, but I found that along with that, I discovered there's some other things that can help me make progress a lot faster and more enjoyably than traditional sheet music book alone. And I believe if you follow these tips, no matter which method you're using, if you follow them, you'll jump start your piano progress. So I'm not going to cover the obvious things, like, for example, practice your piano scales or practice consistently, because I don't need to cover those things. Hopefully you already know them. So I'm going to cover some things that I wouldn't have known starting off. Okay, first thing is start off mastering chords and their inversions. To know, for example, this is a C major chord. I know that I can play C major chord in a few different ways, and I can play it all over the keyboard. I know if I hit this note right here, it's part of C major chord. I can hit this note right here, it's part of C major chord. I can jump around the keyboard and hit pieces. I can see the C major chord, and I can hit it in all different ways. After a while, you don't have to start off with it, but you can even start hitting the C major chord with 4 fingers in different ways. And that's just one major chord, but you really want to start knowing your major and minor chords like this and get thoroughly acquainted with them. This is, for example, D major chord. It's playing with 4 fingers. You don't have to play right away with 4 fingers, but at least the triads, where that's three fingers, to be able to know I can play this all over easily. I know how to do it. You also want to be able to do it in your left hand. I found for me that it's not as important to know every single inversion of every single chord in my left hand. It's useful. At first, you don't need to. I've mostly got this position internalized and the root position internalized when I'm playing chords and remembering them. But the main thing is to be able to spot on the keyboard visually. I know I can see this D major is right here. D major is right here. And to be able to point the notes out, pluck them out. So to master chords is the first one and big one. And then secondly, to master left-hand patterns, at least a few left-hand patterns. I found that piano is so much more enjoyable when I'm able to vary it up a little bit. And if you have some left-hand patterns mastered, different ones, I'm doing just different reusable patterns right now. I'm showing you on my left hand from a C major position. And if you work on those, you can apply them to most songs that you're playing by chord. And it becomes very easy to change songs up and to improvise. And so it becomes very much more enjoyable, and it will help you to be able to focus on the melody more if you're able to have these left-hand patterns internalized. And you'll find that a lot of them come up in music and are reused. So to master those is number 2. The third tip is to practice common chord progressions in all keys. For example, probably the most common one I can think of is 1, 5, 6, 4, which is in the key of C. It's C major, G major, A minor, F. But you want to be able to play that in other keys. For example, how would I play that in in the key of A major? That's A, and then I know that the 5, so that's 1. So the 5 is going to be whatever is on your pinky in the root triad. That's E. And then the 6 in the A major scale, it's going to be F minor. And then what's the 4? Well, it's D in the A major scale. So to be able to play that chord progression across keys is really useful because it comes up a lot. And music that you're going to play, it's going to have a lot of these reusable patterns, but in different keys. And there's 12 different major keys, and then there's minor keys that you can play in. But ultimately, to know these common chord progressions, at least start off with that, and then you can move on. And then number 4 is music theory. Basic music theory is so useful because you start to understand how music is composed, how the melody matches the chords, how chords move, how the melody moves. For example, if I'm in the key of C major and the melody is going down and on a main beat it hits a D, I know that usually it's going to match a G chord, because a G major chord, because a G major chord has a D in it. And that's one of the most commonly used chords in the key of C. And to know how the melody is moving, you could start to feel and see how the notes are matched. If I'm going up and I hit an F note, then it's probably a good chance that it's going to be an F major chord. If I hit a G, well, you can't just assume that it's going to be a G major chord. It's very often not the case. It's very often a C major chord too, because both C major and G major have the note of G. So you have to be able to tell, though, am I ending a part of a song? If so, then it's a very much better chance that it's a C major chord than a G major chord. And so understanding some things like this, how notes match chords and how the melodies move, to know that 5 often goes to 1 when you're ending a song. So to be able to see the notes in a key as numbers, that A in a C major scale is 6, that F is 4, C is 1, and to know that across your scales, it really comes in handy. So that's just talking about basic music theory and how the music is composed and repeats. Number 5 is regarding sheet music. When you start looking at sheet music, you're not looking at single notes anymore. You're looking at patterns. For example, you can know that that's a triad right there. You could see the 3 notes right there. And it's a C major triad because I know that that bottom note in the middle there with a line through it is a C note. So when I look at that, I don't even really have to pay attention to the other notes. I know that's a C major chord. And I can even see it arpeggiated across a sheet. And I can see that's just a C major chord arpeggiated. Maybe I can look at this and I know that that's an octave. So I know that's these 2 notes. I don't really have to think about it. I'm looking at one piece of information. It's an octave. You could start to see shapes. Maybe I can see that's a C major chord, but it's inverted in first inversion, because you see those 2 notes on the bottom with that gap right there. And then you have the C note. That's a C major chord inverted. You can start to recognize that. Inverted into the first inversion. You could start to see that's a second inversion. Even if you don't know the note yet, if it takes you a second to recognize the note, you could say, well, that's a second inversion something. Here's a second inversion something. Might be a little more confusing. What is that? That's a second inversion G major chord, because if you know that this note right here on the treble, above the treble clef, is the G note, and you know that this is a second inversion chord here, then you could tell that's a G major chord. So you could start to see shapes on the sheet music. It's a huge advantage to you if you start to see shapes, intervals. This right here is a third, that's a fourth. So the gaps, you start to see the gaps. So Seeing these things, patterns and shapes on sheet music, will help you play piano so much easier from a sheet. Number 6, basic ear training comes in hugely helpful. The main thing is you don't have to be an expert. Ear training is a huge endeavor to go down that path. There's a lot to it. You really can go deep into ear training, and it takes a long time. The ear, I believe, is the slowest thing to develop in our piano skill. But to at least be able to start out and match a sound that you're hearing on the radio or on in a song somewhere, or somebody else playing the piano, be able to match it to the piano. And there's apps for this. There's websites, and I'll leave a link in the description to some that I like that have helped me. But basically, even one simple exercise you could do is just hum a note. Say, To be able to hum, I heard a song yesterday that my kids liked. It's called "It's Raining Tacos." It goes, "It's raining tacos." So I just played that in my head. So then I tried to, I know that probably ends on the root note, that line right there. So I hummed, which note is that? And then I sounded out, okay, maybe we're in the key of E flat. And so if I'm in the key of E flat, let's try to sound out. It's raining tacos. Okay. Basic ear training. It helps to be able to at least match notes from your head and hum it and get it onto the keyboard. Match it there. Okay. And then lastly, to visualize patterns on the piano. So I talked about visualizing it on the sheet, but being able to even see it on the piano. I just said "It's raining tacos" goes like this. To be able to look and see these 3 notes and say that's the beginning of "It's Raining Tacos" and see them together in my mind, it helps you to remember how to play it if you can see it. The chord progressions, for example, if you can look at chord progressions and say these 4 notes right here, that's a certain chord progression. For example, if you can see all those notes together, you could say that's a chord progression in the key of A or F sharp minor. For example, this is the chord progression that "River Flows in You" is played to. Okay, F sharp, D, A, E. And so you can see that these are the 4 notes that the song is going to play in the chord progression. It's just going to jump this way. You can almost see like a little arrow in your mind going around from here to here, here to here, here to here. And then pretty soon you start to just feel it. Okay, that's 7 tips. But the last tip as a bonus is you can simplify your music. If you want to learn songs but don't have the skill to play it yet, you can find simpler versions of the songs. For example, I learned Moonlight Sonata in a very simple way instead of learning with a lot of the original key. I learned it like this. So you can enjoy music even without doing the full versions of the songs. You could find simple versions of the songs. Okay, so those are some things that helped me. It's not by any means a complete list, but some that came to my mind that helped me a lot. I found these to be some of the most important. And you don't have to be a master of all this right away. Jump into a little bit of each one and work on these together. If you do this early on in your piano journey, piano I think will become 10 times easier for you than if you're just learning a traditional way from a sheet music book, for example, that doesn't teach any of this. And it's basically the difference between someone sitting down teaching you typing as a 3-year-old versus teaching you about language and words and content, vocabulary, how to put them together. It's looking at things at a much higher level really helps to get music out to the keyboard in a more meaningful way than just note for note. So hopefully these help you.